Joining me today are two very significant creative forces over at the upstart indie comics publisher that promotes comics of every kind for every mind, Cosmic Lion Productions. One is not just the founder of Cosmic Lion, but he is also a comic creator himself, fellow podcaster, and maybe one of the most enthusiastic Grendel megafans I have ever seen. The other is the critically acclaimed Eisner-nominated cartoonist who you may know for his work over at Mad Magazine and his cult comic series Minimum Wage. It is my pleasure to welcome both Eli Schwab and Bob Fingerman onto the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? Good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. Bob, you had a very well-timed cough right there as I introduced you.
I'm a pro, I like to keep all my eruptions on mic, not off mic.
I appreciate you getting that just out of the way right at the beginning. That's perfect. And it's a nice sort of break at the very beginning too, because it's such a pleasure to have both you guys here today to again talk about CLP, a lot of the great stuff you guys are doing over there. Eli, I mean, I think what I'm most excited about in this conversation is, of course, I'm very happy to have Bob here on the show and discuss all of his work, not just at CLP, but also prior to that. But I'm just very, very, I'm trying to think of a less verbose way of just saying very excited to learn more about Cosmic Lion, because I've sort of seen your whole setup at different conventions, just sort of in passing, and it's always like very busy, which is really, really cool to see, especially for, the small press world, and we'll sort of get into the trials and tribulations of that. But I would love to start here if I can. Give us sort of that origin story, I guess you could say, for CLP, and then is there an inciting incident that basically that happened in your life that eventually pushed you towards the creation for this publisher?
Yeah, definitely. First, I'd just like to say that it's an honor to just be working with Bob. Like, Bob has been making comics, and this might embarrass him a bit, but my entire life. Like, I was born and Bob is out there still making amazing books. So it's just an honor to even have Bob mentioned in the same conversation as us. So let's just start there.
That's a very nice way of saying I am the oldest person in this room, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it's amazing, and I always tell Bob, recently I was back home looking through my comics from growing up, and I find this Ninja Turtle comic that I always thought was like weird and interesting and different. And of course, this is a Bob Fingerman joint, so Bob's been out there doing it forever. So I just want to make sure he has his just flowers.
Thank you.
From me. And, I have been making comics basically my whole life. So technically, Bob and I have been making them the same time. No, I'm
sure.
just kidding, but
both of you have been making comics your entire life, Eli.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. So, I just always was drawing comics, and once I started getting like out into work and wanting to figure out how I was going to really like make a mark on the world around me, I found that it was through exalting the things I loved, and comics and music always kind of being at the forefront. And so I started working at a music venue called Nectar's in Burlington, Vermont, who recently shut down, which sucked so bad. But there I was given an opportunity to plan events and to be someone who was like putting together events for people. So I would do music, and then that's when I started being like, well, if I'm doing an event, I want to have comics be a part of it. And so that's when I kind of created Cosmic Lion Productions, just kind of on a whim, because I knew you needed to be branded. Everyone in Burlington that was putting on shows, Burlington, Vermont is where the venue was. I don't know if I said that, Nectar's. Everybody had their little name, their cool, like, production company name. So I was like, I've got to do something. I looked over at this poster for this band, Sound Tribe Sector 9, that I was really into at the time. And right in the middle, there was this lion with this kind of cosmos in the forehead. And that kind of combined things that I was already really into, lions being a symbol that my grandparents had all over their home, and is a big symbol in Judaism. And I was big into learning about different religions, and Rastafarianism at the time was a big thing. I was listening to a lot of Bob Marley and many others, of course. And so the lion is just something that I kind of adopted and then the comic that I created, Monkey Lion, was kind of all wrapped into that. And then just the cosmos is because of that image, and then because the story that I started writing was basically like intergalactic Afro funk band on tour through the galaxy, merging my love of like Ninja Turtles and Star Trek and music touring, which I had been working on for a while. And so that was, like you asked, the inciting incident where it was just a convergence of all these things, where now I was able to provide a service for people and create something. And I wanted to have it under my own thing. I wanted to have my own comic and my own stuff to do. So it all kind of happened at once. Monkey Lion, Cosmic Lion Productions, and these Cosmic Lion nights at Nectar's that I would plan, which was like every Monday, which I know is a tough day, but I was just starting out.
Sure.
Monday nights for like 4 or 5 months I planned, and they were all Cosmic Lion nights. There was always comics and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so much there to pick on. I think I want to noodle on that some more, but I want to get over to Bob as well, because I think, as Eli, you reiterated this in the beginning, and I definitely wanted to give Bob his flowers. Bob, you have an insane career in comics over the last 30 plus years, and I just have to know, from your perspective as a creator, what was initially so appealing about Cosmic Lion, and for you to bring your work over to this sort of upstart indie publisher?
Well, I mean, it's probably a complicated answer.
Mhm.
I met Eli at it was the LA Comic-Con.
Yep.
Our mutual friend Shelley Bond introduced us, and I was kind of, between publishers, and I was looking at everything on Eli's table. And, kind of whenever you're looking at something unfamiliar, you do try to find something familiar to kind of
Sure.
latch on to. And he had published a book by a friend of mine, Gideon Kendall, called Wait, It Gets Worse. I thought, oh, yeah, Gideon's here. Because, anytime you approach a publisher, you don't know what you're getting into.
Mhm.
So I reached out to Gideon. I said, I said, I met this guy, Eli. He seems like a nice guy. Is he legit? You got to do your due diligence.
Mhm.
And Gideon reassured me and assured me. He's like, yeah, he's legit. You should talk to the man. So basically, I had a project. I thought I couldn't necessarily say it would be a good fit, because you never know. My project was very different than the stuff Eli had on his table, but I knew it was a good book. I thought the quality of it would appeal, and so yeah, we got together, I think, for lunch uh, at a place called Alcove,
I think so.
and the romance began there. So yeah, I mean, basically, I came with a list of demands. It was like, okay, this is the new guy. Let me see if I'll get what I want.
Mhm.
Uh, and it was really all about production value. It was all about, can I get the best looking book, the best format for showcasing the art? And I said, I wanted hardcover and I wanted oversized. And Eli pulled a book right out of his bag that was the exact size I had in mind, that he had published, called Ghost Agent. And he was like, is this the size you want? It was like, is this your card? And I said, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I have in mind. So, it was a pretty, I think, pretty uh, organic beginning.
It sounds seamless. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it
Did
was
this eventually become Printopia? Is this the
yeah.
series we are talking about? Interesting. Okay. And I guess, Eli, from your perspective in that moment, I guess I would love to get sort of a peek inside your mind when you have Bob Fingerman in front of you asking about this potential partnership, but also B, how do you properly satiate a creator when they ask for certain things? Are you someone who just says yes and then you figure it out, or do you sort of temper things initially and then you sort of give them the moon eventually once you can get there?
You know, I was very excited to work with Bob, not just because of like, who he was, our great conversation, but I don't think he'll be upset to hear me say this, but I'm always trying to do things that are going to help Cosmic Lion just be better too.
Mhm.
And I think working with Bob is something that was going to do that. This is a great book that I knew, like, I mean, it was glorious and it was beautiful. And like upon my first looking, it was just it was just like a new like vine growing out of the body of Cosmic Lion that I knew could grow. And so, I did just say, yeah, let's do it. I was very excited. I read the book and I was like, I love this. I put it on my iPad and read it. And like, I think that in that first meeting, I was just like, yeah, let's go for it. I don't think there was much, I went there for lunch and we didn't get any food and we like talked for like a few hours. And by the time I was done, I was like, I am so hungry. I didn't take care of myself for like 3 hours because I was like so into this conversation, so like,
Sure.
I think it just was, I think just sparks flew immediately and I was ready to go. And that's how most of this for me is on feel and immediate, like sometimes for me, when I'm given a submission, I know like this instantly, whether I'm going to like it or not, or whether I want to move forward with it or not. Like it almost grasps me like immediately. And if it doesn't, I'll read and dig in a little bit more. But when it does, when I do see it and it gives me that immediate spark, I'm like, let's go.
I
I'm usually,
also already had lined up all the blurbs for the book. And
Well,
I remember
now.
you said something, like, well, if they're endorsing it,
Well, if that Graining says it's good, it's gotta
exactly.
be.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be
So-
a dirty name dropper here, but I think it sort of coincides with what Bob is saying here in terms of, I think for creators as they get long in the tooth of their careers and they sort of establish themselves as, and I say that respectfully, Bob, I hope that doesn't come off across as, we keep making fun of your age. And I promise you that's not going to continue. But like when you've established yourself in this medium and in this industry, I think one of the most important, if not the most important thing that you can ask for from a publisher, especially a small publisher, is freedom, right? And I've heard that we've had Christopher Priest on the show here recently. I don't know if you've heard of a little indie creator called Tom McFarlane. He's talked about constantly about his career, sort of like what happened in his career and how basically freedom is what drove him to where he is now. And you keep hearing this over and over again about this freedom. And I don't know if that stems from people being burned by the big two or if there's certain rules at other publishers. But Bob, I'm just curious throughout your career. And I think we can all agree in this conversation that when you see a Fingerman original, it is so that's who that is, right? There's almost no mistaking it. I'm just curious, as you've gotten, throughout your career here recently, I'll say even before CLP, have you gotten a lot of resistance from people who just want to sort of maybe micromanage or dictate how your series is printed and distributed or even read?
No, I don't put myself in that trap. I mean, I think you can second guess a career till your dying breath. And, there are definitely things where I think, well, if I had done this differently or that differently, maybe why I would have a bigger audience or this or that. But I've always stuck to my guns about what I want, for good or for ill, because it's an art form. And like the worst place to start from for me is a place of compromise, which is not to say I'm unreasonable. I'm a big believer in if you have a good editor, your work will probably be better for it. But someone saying don't do this and don't do that because, and then they have some either justification that has to do with some perceived market. This is what the market wants or this or that. You've lost, because I have a voice, it's a distinct voice. It's not a voice everyone is going to respond to. That's fine though, I think the more anodyne the work, that's that whole thing of like, let's appeal to the broadest audience possible. Well, instantly, that work is going to shrink in its daring and originality.
A
'Cause
thing that's made for everyone is made for no one.
yeah, exactly. So, obviously the first audience for anything is myself. Would I want to read this? More importantly, would I want to spend the next year or whatever writing and drawing this? This is the other thing about comics is, at least the way I do them, it's a very labor intensive process. So I'd better like it or it's going to be a real misery. Like one of the only things I ever did in my career that and even there, I didn't do it because I was thinking of a market. I just thought, well, let me try something different. The very first graphic novel I did was a thing for Dark Horse called White Like She that was serialized over 4 issues. And I drew it in a style that was absolutely different than anything I'd ever done, and I almost instantly regretted it, but because I was like, "Oh god, I've committed to this thing, now I've gotta do it." Um, but, even that was a learning experience. You have to try something before you know it's a good fit or a bad fit, so
Hmm.
I don't really regret anything I've done, uh, creatively. But yeah, generally speaking, I think even when working with publishers like Dark Horse or you know, big publishers like that, generally speaking, if they hired me to do something, it's because they wanted me to do it the way I do things.
Hmm.
So, so that's been pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that lesson happened to you so early in your career is not sort of it's that's not an obscure moment. I think a lot of creatives, especially those that have wanted to tell stories in comic form, learn pretty quickly that you're either going to take the long road via small press, or you're probably going to end up doing like a Venom tie-in over at Marvel. Like that's where your career generally starts. At least in today's world, I'm sure it was probably a lot different when you were first getting into the industry, Bob.
Well, I think it also starts from what inspired you in the first place.
Hmm.
And I know I'm an outlier in comics in that I did not read comic books when I was a kid. I just didn't. I'm not a superhero guy, never been a superhero guy. It's like, so in a way, the wanting to do characters and trademarks that belong to somebody else was never something I wanted. It's like the stuff that I responded to was very individualistic right out of the gate, like, from when I was a really little kid on, I mean, underground comics, I probably was introduced to them a little younger than I should have been, but not too young. But, even the creators I looked at, you know, people who end up doing comic books, you don't hear Jules Pfeiffer as often as, say, you hear Jack Kirby. But, that's the kind of thing I was looking at. And, Gay and Wilson and Tintin, Tintin was big for me. And that's an individual. That's somebody who created something. And so that kind of set the die for how I wanted to do comics. It's like, yeah, it should be my thing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Jules Pfeiffer there. I actually was just not too long ago looking at and I'm spacing it right now, but I think it's called is it the are you is this the same Jules Pfeiffer? It's the Great or sorry, the Great Comic Book shoot. Now of course I'm spinning my wheels and butchering it
he
now, but
wrote a history book about comics.
yeah,
So
that's what I was
the
thinking. Yeah.
one.
Yep, that was probably the one sort of explaining the early days of comics. But point being is that, yeah, it's interesting. And it's funny that we're on this topic right now. And Bob, it's funny. It's sort of serendipitous that you're joining this. And I hope, again, Eli, I'm saying this respectfully, a sort of up and coming, publisher, and one that CLP is.
Totally.
And when you were first in the industry back in the day, you working on TMNT, this was sort of the boom of the indie comic, right? Like TMNT in the black and white era of is that sort of the era? Am I correct? You're giving me a look
I
that that's not
I
correct.
was not part of the hip cool turtles. I was part of the Archie turtles.
Oh,
So
sure. Okay. Okay. I apologize.
so
Sorry.
so no worries. But I mean, I again, this is one of these things where my memory's beginning to come back, and I was trying to think, how did I end up doing turtles? And it was because Kevin Eastman liked my work.
Sure.
But I did not somehow slot into the Mirage
Mm.
end of things. I
Oh,
slotted
very
into
cool.
the licensed Archie version, and it might have been a weird fit, you
Show
know.
this cover of Leonardo in playing bagpipes right now
Oh,
because
I
that is the amazing cover. No,
like
I
I
mean I'm telling Chris to edit it in
I'll see if I can
oh,
find it.
okay.
because
Yeah, and I'll put it in here.
yeah,
Yeah, because now
oh,
I
it's
want to
so
see it.
good. Oh, it's amazing.
I didn't know the visual component of what we're recording is
Oh
also
man,
I would be
I love it.
fidgeting less on camera.
Oh man, I
Look at
love
that
that.
guy who keeps flopping around like a fish
I
out
love
of
that
water.
cover, man. I love that cover.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you what, Eli, so we're kind of on the same topic, and this is kind of what I was building towards a moment ago. But, there have been so many changes here in the comic industry in 2025. And, we had the Diamond debacle, of course, earlier in the year. And I think that sort of that happening felt like sort of a slow burn death there for Diamond. Obviously, possibly unexpected tariffs still affecting people, especially the small press folks. I've even seen, and numbers vary depending on which outlet you're going to, but readership is kind of down this year in 2025, at least from a way of finding those stats. It seems to be down this year and outside of the big two. So I'm just curious, again, being the head of CLP, are there some huge, I won't even say huge, let's change that up a little bit. Are there some new tactics? Are there some sort of interesting tactics that you're taking over there at CLP that gets eyes on the new titles you have there?
Yeah, that is interesting because we got in with Diamond like only it was like a year before they imploded. So it was this really like whirlwind, integration and outegration with them. It was just like a roller coaster, of it doing great and then it starting to fall off, and then the news came out. That's what I'm talking about.
Sorry,
Bob.
I just pulled up the Raphael cover.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
There it is.
Love it. That's so good.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Sorry, not to cut you off though, Eli.
No, it's all good. Yeah. So, it was just a whirlwind for us. So like, we reached this level of like, oh my God, we finally have this big distribution. We're going to all the stores around the world. And then it was just like taken away from us immediately. And so that really sucked for us. Now, since then, it's been kind of this struggle to find who's going to be, publishing or distributing now. Who do we want to go to? Who's even got the staying power that we want to put all of our birds into their basket? And we haven't found anyone yet. Something new that I've done is that we hired a press company, Modern Fanatic, who has been helping us out a lot. I mean, hey, they got us this interview, so thanks, Tyler, and all the guys over there.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm trying to find the best ways to get help, and, I hired an editor, and I, got someone to head this manga team. And, I just know that manga is like the number one selling,
Yeah, it is.
paper product in the world. It outsells toilet paper. So I figured like, I don't know if that's a real fact, but it might. But
checking the news, that is correct, actually. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
See, the voracious reader is more thirsty than the voracious butt.
Pooper.
So yes. No, I don't know. Anyway, so like I'm trying all these ways to diversify, to diversify what we're doing and just get it out in front of a million eyes. And nothing's better than having this like team, family, this strong, if I am Archangel, they are the metal wings that spread and send metal arrows of talent throughout the world of cons and stuff, because I just don't feel like there's a better way than cons to like get this out to people. Cons, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that tactic I don't think can change, because getting our people out in front of their fans and being able to connect with people is the best thing. Bob and I just did a con here recently that was it was like 3 or 4 hours of just like consolidated like fans, and it was like absolutely insane. It was like one of the best cons of the year, and it's just, there's nothing better than finding a way to reach that core audience and really get them. So there's no definitive thing that I've found, and we just continue to do more and more things. We're exploring a lot more options with distribution. In 2026, we're going to find it, and we're going to start doing some big moves. We've already kind of set the wheels in motion. We have a full rollout for the first 6 months of next year. We're back cataloging. We're getting stuff ready. We're planning strategically. So yeah, we're taking it from just like a dude in his office to like a team across the world, trying to just make it the best it can be.
I got to be honest with you, Eli. This is super impressive. I'll just say, from someone who's been reading comics for a lot of their life, and I know that the small press is usually up against it, right? I mean, Marvel can put out 7 Spider-Man books, and those will be like, of those 7, 4 of them will be in the top 10 each month in selling. And they're probably, if we're all being honest on this call, not that great, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'm just, you talking about this, and I'm just curious, like, what is your background in comics? Like, obviously you're a fan. I can see just behind you, looking at your background, you clearly have a deep love of the medium.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah.
how did you even have the know-how to want to go about doing this?
Uh, I don't know if I did, honestly. I did go to like a entertainment business college. When I went to I went to college out of high school, and I just went on fish tour during finals and didn't really do anything, and then went out into the workforce, and then that's when I started working at Nectar's and learning how to um become not just a businessman but a businessman,
Hmm.
as Jay-Z once said. um
That's right.
but you just work with a lot of people, and I worked at a small business there, Nectar's, to learn how to market yourself and do all that. And so I did that for 10 years, and then I went back to school, entertainment business at Full Sail, where I kind of got this like holistic entertainment kind of view. And Full Sail is an interesting college because people who work there can get great people to come in. And so I worked with, one of the Backstreet Boys came in, and we worked with him in like a marketing class. And, we worked with this guy who is the number one like blue camera, or he works with, no, sorry, red cameras, and shoots IMAX for NASA. And we worked with all these different people to learn different aspects of the medium, of different mediums of the business of entertainment. Unfortunately, no one in comics really. And then I just kind of like you dive into it, and you fake it till you make it kind of thing. I'm not, too proud to say that, but then you just meet great people, like meeting someone like Shelley Bond, and learning from them, or Bob, or, getting in with retailers. And, I always find great friends uh, who are retailers, that some of the greatest people to talk to. And, you just kind of pick people's brains, and I just did, that's how I did it. I mean, you just put yourself in there, and fake it till you make it, and have some confidence, and so a little bit of elbow grease, and
I've always
I
said,
don't know, man.
one of my favorite sayings is greatness is in the agency of others. So if
Yeah,
you see someone that has a good idea, or if you admire someone, something that's really frustrating to me is when I see someone who's very talented and they just want to make their own, they would just want to pave their own road instead of taking, little bits and pieces from people who have done it before them, maybe well, and they just sort of add that to their tool belt. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the road less traveled, but I think it would be silly sometimes to not just take a good idea when you see it. And it kind of sounds like that's what you're doing
absolutely.
here. And
100%. I feel like that's something I learned from musicians, listening to musicians talk about writing music. There's a guy, Victor Wooten, I still love. He's absolutely amazing. But he just talks about how to make a great bass groove or something. Is you start off with the bass groove you love,
Mhm.
and then you just kind of start variating until you get to something new, and then you're like, there it is. And so that's what I did with starting my own comic. I love Star Trek and Ninja Turtles. Let's smash them together and see what I can get out of it. And so it's just kind of you got to incorporate the things that make it great. And I grew up loving Art Crumb and the Zap Comics guys, and that tied in with my like love of the San Francisco scene and Grateful Dead and poster art. And so
Mhm.
then that grassroots kind of campaign stuff, and just making stuff, and then that's when like Jim Mahfood and his underground zines came into my world. And then I just
Gem
saw
rocks.
that. Yeah, dude. And then I actually have that first comic I bought in a little frame back here.
Oh, wow.
But it's just it was, and I just was like, okay, this is just paper photocopied and stapled together. So then that informed me on how I could next, like, so it's just those little things, and I just stole it, like, not
Yeah.
steal it, you incorporate it, you are the thing, the blob that just absorbs. And
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm going to ask the question slightly different, Bob, because I feel like you have to have a great perspective on this. Gosh, I'm putting a lot of pressure on you now by asking it like this, but uh, I guess in a very similar light, from a creator's perspective, or just someone who's just loves the medium and the industry, what are some of the biggest challenges you think facing indie creators and just indie comics in going into 2026?
Oh boy, yeah. Pearls of wisdom. I don't know. And I don't know. You say love the industry. I don't. I don't think I do love the industry. Uh,
He's on us,
it,
everybody.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I love the medium. I love the
Mhm.
medium of comics. I love creating comics. Do I love the infrastructure?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
As it used to say on my report card, needs improvement. Um, so, but the thing is, I mean, again, I'm the dinosaur here. Been doing this professionally for 40 years. One of the books that actually next month comes out from Eli from Cosmic Lion is my book, That's Some Business You're In, the title of which comes from my father, because every time I would talk about what I did for a living, he would just shake his head and say, "That's some business you're in." So seemed appropriate. But I mean, it's a book about 40 years of doing this professionally. Forget about the years I did it just coming up. And the thing is, when you start a career uh, at a certain time, you think things somehow are set in stone. What you don't realize is everything is always changing. People change, the world changes, industries change. So the comics business has radically changed since I started. I started professionally 1984. And back then, a book that would be considered an absolute crushing, abysmal failure would be a huge success now. Like, for instance, I mentioned White Like She before. When Dark Horse published that, the reason they didn't put it out, they didn't do the collected version as a trade paperback, is because it only sold in the 10 to 15,000 range.
Mhm.
So it was kind of a fail.
Those are
Uh,
absolute
you
Batman
know,
numbers now.
I was going to say, now you would literally kill somebody to get those kind of numbers. So the thing is, it changes. So when I look ahead at 2026, I look at the beginning of every year it might sound like it's in spite of what I'm saying, with optimism. I don't move forward. I wouldn't keep doing this if I didn't have some sense of optimism. But I also have learned, and it was a hard lesson to learn, to basically manage one's expectations. That's a huge thing. When you constantly are setting the goal for the ideal, all you're doing is setting yourself up for disappointment,
Mhm.
because that ideal is hardly attained by anybody anymore. So all you can do is really try to find your people
Mhm.
and make peace with the fact that you have more people than you're finding and are finding you. They're out there. But that's the whole challenge. Like, how do you find your audience?
yeah.
Because especially you've got 10 zillion voices screaming for attention all the time. And, not everyone can be a TikTok star. And even there, I don't know, like, say if you had 1 million followers on TikTok, what's then the percentage that would actually buy something you create when they can just look at you creating content for free?
Mhm.
So there's no, I'm sorry, this is a long-winded answer, but the truth is, there's really no answer to the question. I already forgot what it was. So, uh, but I mean,
The question
I'll,
was, I want Bob just to wax poetics for 5 to 7 minutes, and you
oh,
you
well,
succeeded. You succeeded.
then,
Did it.
you teed me up. Um,
The
yeah,
funny thing about the TikTok star thing too is you may get them to buy that first book, but then they usually don't come back for a second because they bought it because they're buying into your videos, not because they like to read comics. So it's more important to get them to buy issue 2, issue 3, or a new title, to how do you keep the repeat?
Mhm.
Because, my whole family and cousins and friends from home bought the first issue of Monkey Line, but virtually none of them came back for 2 or 3 or
Yeah.
4 and
Yeah.
don't buy from me now, so
Yeah.
it's like, you have to sell people on it, on the whole thing, you know
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
and I
so
think the other thing is, whether this is an old-fashioned idea or not, uh, the consumer wants value for their dollar, and the thing is, things ain't getting cheaper.
yeah,
Mhm.
So
yeah,
give them their money's worth. Sometimes, I mean, that's the thing about comics is, a lot of times you'll get this comic that you've been really excited about, and you read it, and 10 minutes later you're done. And it's just like, well,
Yep.
okay then, that was $5 or $6 for 15 minutes of entertainment. Am I going to look at it again? Some people do. They'll look at it to appreciate the art, but a lot of people, that first read is also their last read. So, it's got to be something that's really going to get its hooks into them, make them feel like, yeah, that was really worthwhile. I hope I want to see more. As a creator, the only thing I take into account maybe that is a little bit market based, but it's also the aesthetic that I have is I want people to feel like they got their money's worth, because I do think like a consumer. I am a consumer. When I'm making a decision, what am I going to buy? I want to look at it and say, oh yeah, that'll keep me busy for a little bit. I mean, this is where like, just as a sidebar, like people who don't play video games, okay, pay $60, $70 for this thing. Yeah, because I'll get like 300 hours of entertainment out of it. It's like, can you name anything else where, in terms of hours versus dollars, you're going to get a more bang for your buck? A great video game will keep you busy. Look at Grand Theft Auto 5. That's game's 15 years old. People still
Yeah.
play it every day. There's never been a better deal, and that's why it is literally the most successful entertainment property in the history of entertainment. So, so that's a long way of saying if I'm going to do a comic, there's going to be extraneous detail in every panel because I want people to have something to look at. It's like, okay, I read it. Now I'll look at the background. Oh yeah, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. There's going to be eye candy. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Like that is actually, I'm a big collector. I'm a dirty trade waiter, everybody. I'll admit it here live on the show. I think most listeners know this by now, but I will say that, and I'll collect, what we're talking about right here is something that I often falter at is that like, I will just buy from creators I really like. That's sort of been my progression. It went from buying big two to following creators. And now it's funny we're talking to you, Bob, because I feel like you very much sit in this camp is that I like other than house style. Right.
Right.
If it's challenging or if it presses the boundaries, I think Jim, you mentioned, Eli, you mentioned Jim Mahfood earlier. I think he's a great example of this as well, of someone who is just telling stories differently in comics today. Right. I think that's so important. And, I feel like a lot of times when you have a comic or, this art object, I'll say that you can, again, as you said, Bob, you can sort of study for a bit. Right. I'm thinking one that comes to mind immediately is like, Jesse Lonergan's Drome that came out through 23rd Street earlier this year. That's a book that you could easily read in 30 minutes if you really want to. But if you really sit there and study panel layouts and a lot of what you're saying, Bob, like the background and what is he trying to tell you visually, right? I think that's so important. You could study that book for a week at least, right? So that's very valuable. And I want to sort of tie this into a question instead of just bragging about Jesse Lonergan, even though he's great.
He's great. He's great.
So again, Eli, I'm gonna start with you here. And I heard you say this and I found it really admirable. You said that your dream is for when someone walks up to your Cosmic Lion booth at a convention, no matter their taste, you want them to find something that speaks to them. So outside of Bob and his work at CLP with Printopia and Reese's Pieces, which I know is already among some of your bestsellers, I'm sure. But who are a couple other creators or series that are over at CLP that you think should be on people's radar? And I know it's hard to pick. It's like picking your kids, right? Like it's hard to pick favorites, but it just front of brain, who are some folks that you think are really making some noise over at CLP?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can go off sales. And I mean, it kind of started with Kevin Catalan, who does Space Knights. He was one of the first kind of like all-stars that we have where, we had him at the booth. And this was, when I maybe had like 5 or 6 books. He was one of the first guys that I picked up. And, his book would just sell out and sell out. And everyone was coming. We heard about this. We heard about this. And like still to this day, I think I might have actually just sold my last one. I kept like finding packs. I found so we're sold out now. Although I do have 2 that are printed upside down. If you guys are upside down and backwards,
some misprints.
So a couple oops, in there. He was one of the first ones that really like started blowing us away, and then he immediately got on with IDW and started doing Turtles covers and full Godzilla book now and Street Sharks and At San Diego Comic-Con, they had his Street Sharks piece humongous on their backdrop, and he didn't even know.
Wow.
And not that that's bad. He signed a
Right.
contract; they don't have to tell him. But so I sent him the image, and he was just like, "Whoa," And so like Kevin Catalan was one that really blew us away, and Kev had a lot of people that followed him who came to me to pitch. One of them being Siraji, who is also on DC Digital right now. He's doing a book called Nightwing, Nothing But Nightwing, BUTT.
Okay.
And
I get
he
it.
did
I see.
that, and he did a Superboy. It's like a digital comic, and his work is absolutely stunning. And then again, Morgan Herron came out, and he was killing it with Frankie Boy Monster. And then now that led us to Raymar Brunson, who Raymar is like absolutely destroying it with Ghost Man. 2 issues of Ghost Man out. He's working on the 3rd one now. He put out a biomechanical protector bone grinder. I was butchering that name, but I can't anymore. I will never do it again, Raymar. I'm sorry. And and then now he's worked. Oh, and he also did Detective Pickle PI. Yes, he's all 3 is the slogan of that one. He's a detective, he's a pickle, and he's a PI. It's like a kind of humorous noir. And he's working on a super secret project with a huge creator right now. A guy like a Hollywood guy that we knew that came through and pitched us this book. And so Raymar's working on that. The first issue is going to be done next year. And so Raymar's absolutely destroying it. Like, I could just go on. Ghost Agents, all the creators that have worked on Ghost Agents with us, many of which spun out to do their own stuff. Ben Perkins is an amazing artist that did Ghost Agents and killed it. Raymar's in there. Rick Lopez is a guy who's a friend and just absolutely destroying it. We'll finally have his Cosmic Cat with us. Ro Higashi, who's the head of our manga team, absolutely like mind-blowing manga art. And I trust her vision so much that she went out and found 3 that's being published now, and I think we've got 3 more on the horizon. I could go on forever.
Wow.
But,
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Because I used to brag that you could come to my table and I have, we have 50 books, but there's a couple. So I would say I've got like at least 30 pitches memorized. So test me, and so.
Well, that's an embarrassment of riches. Honestly, it's so many, like you said, and you were standing up to the pitch, or not the pitch, the sort of tagline that we talked about there at the beginning, where you want everyone that walks up to your booth, or sorry, it was well, you said that as well. You said everyone that comes to your booth, you want them to find something, but also comics for every kind of every mind. I think that's a great tagline.
Yeah, man. For all the, I think you should leave fans out there. I want to be the Dan Flashes of comics. So you come in and they have my exact shirt. It's the exact shirt. If you're a Tim Robinson fan, but
that's right. Yeah.
Trying to be I just want to have something perfect for each person, and I want to, and so we're just kind of branching out.
Well, I absolutely love what we've talked about thus far. And again, I hope people that have listened to this conversation here are excited about CLP. And I want to give you guys one last chance to sort of, I guess, broadcast not only, Bob, your work and what you have working over at CLP, but also Eli, if we've missed anything. But before we get there, I have one final question for both of you. And Bob, I'll start with you here. We like to generally end our interviews or conversations with asking folks, what's one thing that you're really enjoying right now? And again, it could be a movie, that could be a podcast, an album, a TV show, another comic, what have you. So Bob, I'm going to hand it off to you. Is there one thing that sort of just, it doesn't even have to be your favorite, just something that immediately comes to mind that you've really been enjoying recently?
Oh my God, I'm going to be a demon because I'm not going to recommend a comic. But I've been listening almost nonstop to this Italian doom metal band called Messa. And oh my God, that's just the soundtrack of my life these days. Is this very melodic, very doomy metal band. Yeah.
Very
Italian metal band with a female vocalist who has an absolutely beautiful voice. She's not one of these growlers or whatever. She's got beautiful pipes, but it's great music. So I don't know. So that music's been keeping me very inspired while I've actually been working on writing and things. So usually I can't listen to music while I'm writing, but there's something just about kind of the, again, sort of the beautiful doominess of it. So, so
is that
I'm gonna go with that.
Is that
MESSA?
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. As I say, I'm going to look it up as soon as we get off here. So thank you for that. And I'm excited to hear what it's all about. And then Eli, let's pass it off to you. Is there anything that you've sort of really been loving recently that you want to sort of let the listener know about?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure I'm gonna say a comic either,
That's all right.
because I've been doing other than Printopia.
Printopia, Reese's
What's the
Pieces.
finger there, Bob? Yeah.
I was going to recommend one more thing.
Oh,
go
yeah,
ahead,
please
go
do.
ahead.
Please do.
The 2025 film Deathstalker, Steve Kostanski's Deathstalker. He resurrected an old 80s Roger Corman direct to VHS series and put his own spin on it, and it's great. It's just so much fun.
That's amazing. Who's the director? I'm sorry. Who was that?
Steven Kostanski, who
Okay.
did Psycho Gorman a couple of years ago.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Anyway,
awesome.
it's a lot of fun.
I think I saw that somewhere here recently, and I just sort of passed her by because I didn't know what it was. So now I'm going to look at two great recommendations by Bob. Thank you so much for that, because I have been looking for something new to watch too. So, so Eli, I'm sorry. What were you? No, I'm glad we covered that.
I listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm working and doing things to kind of take my mind. I think, and I heard like Todd McFarlane say this one time, and it upset me. That all I do is work on comics. I don't read comics anymore, and I'm reaching the point where I work on comics all day, and to relax, I don't reach for a comic. Every now and then I do, and I do have guilty pleasure. I like to pick up a X-Men, or I read a Star Trek comic and stuff like that. So I do enjoy those. There's a Star Trek Lower Decks comic that's like a choose your own adventure.
Okay.
And so that does kind of provide you with a lot of things. I did it a few times. I died like immediately the first time. Like you just die immediately. Like if you choose coffee instead of Ractigino. So I'll give you a little hint there.
Yeah.
But I listen to podcasts a lot, and one I'm listening to right now is about Fela Kuti, who's like one of my favorite musicians, and he's also like super political, and he fought like against colonialization and Nigeria, and he became this old. Yeah, it's on my shirt. It is. Yes.
Yeah.
Mizimo drew this image a long time for me ago for like a mini comic. And I told him to put it up on on his t-shirt shop the other day. It's just because I wanted to wear it. And yeah, so this new podcast, I didn't even realize it when I first started listening, but it's produced by like Obama's new podcast company. So I mean, it's super highly produced. It's Abumrad is the host. He's from like another amazing podcast, Chad Abumrad, and it's amazing. It's got all these amazing people talking about Fela, and it's just very well produced and very well done. I think it's like 9 or 10 episode limited series, and it's got me absolutely hooked, and I'm going to be sad when it's gone. But luckily I'm a big fan of Fela's and have been for a long time. I even wrote a comic about him like maybe 20 years ago.
Wow.
That I never really released or anything except for in my super old collections. But yeah, that podcast has got me hooked. And when I do read comics, it's more like a guilty pleasure thing. I'm not out here reading the deepest, darkest. Although I do have the deep dark here that I just got, so I am excited to.
Tales of Paranoia
really
for everybody,
sad.
for the audio listeners out there. Yeah. I have to say, two things during your response there, Eli, that I have to ask you about, or I guess respond to, is you talking about sort of being very into like the history of. I just put it on my queue, is the new Ken Burns American Revolution documentary that's out on Amazon that I'm very excited to get into. And then secondly, is that a dupe tattoo on your arm?
Ken Burns Jazz for me is the one that will always do it for me. But yes, it is a dupe tattoo.
Okay, I just had to. I saw like his little X and his little belly underneath your arm, so I just had to ask really quickly on that. Sorry for the deviation. That will. I think that's about all I have for both of you guys. And what a pleasure it was having you both here on the show. Again, I will have all the links for Cosmic Lion Productions in the show notes for everybody. I will have links to all of Bob's work over there at CLP as well. And I will pass it off to both of you one last time, starting with Bob. How can people follow you? Is there anything that we missed here in this conversation that you want to briefly tease or highlight before I get you out of here?
Well, I mean, just the 3 books from Cosmic Lion, Printopia, which, since this will be airing after the event, I have just found out won the Best Humor Book,
Ooh,
a 2025 award from the Tripwire Awards in the
heck yeah,
UK. So I'm
heck yeah.
very excited about that. Um, and Recess Pieces Reanimated, which is the radically revised version of my 2006 plain old Recess Pieces. This one has been forensically retooled, and I think radically improved. And then the coffee table book of my career, That's Some Business You're In. I'm super proud of that. And this is an expanded edition. There was a crowdfunded version from Zoop last year, but this one is longer uh, and better, I will say. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Zoop people, but this one's great. So yeah,
Is that we were talking a little bit before the recording, you were mentioning that nothing has been officially announced as of this conversation. Is that what you were teasing beforehand?
the award, yeah, because the
Okay.
awards are happening Wednesday night in London. So
Oh, okay. That's
so
amazing.
if this is Friday, the embargo will be over.
That's good. All right. Eli, let me pass it off to you. Is there anything we missed in this conversation? And also, how can people follow you, Cosmic Lion? Again, I'll have links for everything, but just in case I missed something.
Yes, absolutely. CosmicLionProductions.com is kind of the hub. We'll take you everywhere. We're Cosmic Lion Productions on most other things. Those books, Printopia is available on our website or through Amazon. The Recess Pieces Reanimated is up for pre-order now, and That's Some Business You're In will be up for pre-order very soon. They'll be shipping probably at the latest January. And just we have a ton of new books. Lion Cosmique is our new anthology that I'm super proud of. This is issue 1. Issue 2 is getting printed right now. So this is kind of like our ongoing kind of like heavy metal-y type of anthology, sci-fi horror adventure with a mix of music journalism in there. And that is something I've been super proud of. I've been getting my kind of editing design chops back and going in on that. Just a galaxy of comics from us as well, including working with some other old heads like Matt Howarth, who we have a bunch of new books coming out with Matt Howarth, who you might know of Savage Henry and Those Annoying Post Brothers. And just a ton of stuff. And we're constantly working on new stuff. Today, it was just announced that we're a sponsor rolling out with IC3, the new, or we had it the last 2 years. It was an independent convention, and now it was bought by Comic Art Fans. And so we're working with them to kind of roll out this independent comic book convention that's going to be there in New Haven area again next year, but then also new ones at OAX and also in Jacksonville next June or July. And so I'm hoping to have a nice presence there and just, again, exalting the word of independent comics everywhere. I'm so excited to do that. My Grendel podcast, which you talked about briefly at the beginning, The Devil in Detail, the Grendel Reread podcast, is available wherever you get your podcast. And we chat with everybody from Matt Wagner, we've had Tim Sale on there before he passed. We have one of the most popular videos on my YouTube is me and Ben, my co-host, and we went and hung out with Joe Matt and walked around LA, and we do this kind of roving interview with Joe Matt, another amazing dude who is no longer with us. But there's just a wealth of stuff over at our YouTube. And I don't know, man. I got tons of stuff. Back issues of Cosmic Lion Radio, my music podcast, where we talk to creators of comics, music, and film and build mixtapes is available. And I don't know, man. Just check it out.
Got a lot of things, Eli. There's I mean, you got your hand. When I was going, just as the last thing, as I was going through preparing for this conversation, I mean, Bob has been in the industry for 40 years, and somehow you have like an insane amount of things on your website of things you're either working on now or previously worked on. That includes like 3 podcasts, a publishing company. Like you're doing a lot, is what I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, the glories of the modern world of internet and Zoom and all that stuff makes it a lot easier. So then, probably 35 of the or 30 of the years Bob's been doing it, I probably wouldn't have been able to do what I do in 1984. One, because I would be only 0 years of age, but also, just like he said, the world's different now. And so
Yeah,
I'm taking advantage of it as much as I can.
that's right. Well, again, Bob, Eli, thank you both so much for joining me here today on the Oblivion Bar podcast. It means a lot. I'm excited to get this out to everybody and get them, if they're not already tracking what's going on with CLP, now they are. And I would love to get you guys back on at some point, either individually or together again. But until then, take care, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.